Welcome, everybody, to Mudflood was Armageddon. Mudflood was Armageddon, the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they are willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. Night, night, caveman myth. It's always been starforts. It's always been those cities of men who we know, not only because of the Bible, but because of the proof that we've seen of what they can build. They were kind of better at building and things like that. It was always, so where did the caveman myth come from? Let's put it to bed. Let's put it to go. Let's put it to go. Night, night. We got to get this screen sharing thing here going. I'm going to see if I have any pictures that I wanted to share before we move on. There's the caveman. Hey, caveman. It's like looking in a mirror. Zach is putting out some comments, dropping comments. Where are the resurrected immortal saints from Revelation 20 verses 4 and 6? So if there was any doubt among the golden age past people who don't even, who want to believe that, yeah, they're going to be immortal. You learned it from dispensationalists, the people, that also think that Zechariah 14 is Armageddon. And it's not. And are you sure about that? If what you just said is true, then Jesus was lying. He told them then at that time he was coming back soon. They really don't have an argument for that. If it did, where are all those resurrected saints? And Jesus, they're assuming Jesus was going to be ruling on a throne because they believed that Israel was preserved by God and miraculously became a country again in 1948 without any machinations behind the scene. Get with the scene. Also, there would be a 184-mile-long graveyard over that. And the Mount of Olives is not split in half. Again, with the Zechariah 14, all of you people who lean on that, you're not sure exactly what it says. You're hoping it agrees with something you've been preconditioned. You have a presuppositional aspect towards believing it. Revelation 19:11, verse 21 has not happened yet. When Jesus comes back, he comes in the full measure of God. He ain't leaving. He doesn't have to. He will be fully revealed as he has always been. When he comes back, isn't there going to be, if you keep reading Revelation 19:24 and 25, you might be in for a surprise. I finished some more requirements. I was only 30 days late on my college exams. Hey, the weird world of Uranus. Get off of it. Come on, man. You know what I mean? This planet. So this was the first picture spacecraft flew past Uranus. Caveman. No caveman. Voyager 2 discovered 10 new moons. They didn't know anything about Uranus until NASA, 1986. Okay, I just thought that's a particularly bright leaf pattern on that bush. And this is the famous Primavera, and she just wants people to know that data that leads the way opens up that what you see. And she's a quantum physicist talking about the problems they have with gravity and the universe. They got a real problem. We might look at that. We might not. I want to talk about cavemen tonight. This guy, look at that. Hey, we might look at him going like, the meter was invented as a perfect ratio, but even our meter, based on the speed of light, he goes on to say, we have no idea why they came up with the meter, matching it to what a second is. And as hard as we try to figure out what a real meter is, they're drawing a blank. Too bad they don't know what the mediator of life is, Jesus Christ. This arch dates back 2,000 years BC. We're going to look at some other, aspects. This is 1,000 years, so that's quite a jump in their world. 9,000 BC. So as we know, these are bigger than your standard temple. You believe cavemen built that? That's what Paco wanted to know. This was the first canoe. So we're getting a timeline, when Ha-Adam was created from the dust, from the previous creation of the Titans, last Elohim, divine council and all that. We're talking about caveman tonight, though. We're going to be looking at Ezekiel 31. I got it pulled up. And at the very end, you're going to say, whatever they're talking about. Verse 18. Who then is like you in glory and greatness among the trees of Eden? You also will be brought down to the depths of the earth to be with the trees of Eden. You will lie among the uncircumcised with those slain by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, declares the Lord. There's a pretty strong argument that this is what they call a metaphor, an analogy. And when they tell you that it's an analogy, they'll say this is metaphor. Not everything is metaphor, as C.S. Lewis and others would have you believe. But when they give you this is Pharaoh. He's going to, and besides, it's not like Ezekiel 31's not weird enough, right? We're going to be looking at all of 1 Sam 13. Now, no cavemen in the land. Now, there was no blacksmith to be found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, least the Hebrews make themselves swords or spears. But every one of the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen his plowshare, his mattocks, his axe, and his sickle, anything of iron, because the Palestinians were ruling over them big time, in charge, large and in charge, as they say. And the charge was 2/3 of, they made them pay. Probably didn't pay for their travel time or anything. But if they wanted to be able to have something, maybe if somebody had enough money to get their sickle sharp, but everybody else was using whatever they could. They weren't cavemen. They would have been happy to have been in charge. And when they were in charge, there were plenty of swords. Plenty of swords. Oh, wow. What's this verse say? But if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king. So before I got into the tabs, I wanted to just start with that question that I'm going to pose. Do you think that Israel, when they chose Barabbas, culminated their whole career of their spirit may have been willing, but their flesh was always weak, and they chose Barabbas. If you still do wickedly, you will be swept away, both you and your king. Well, we have the perfect king. He didn't get swept away. I wonder how Herod's doing. He claimed to be a god, got ate by worms. Shit, I was not sharing. I was giving you all of those verses and everything, and I was reading along with it. Did I just say the S word? I'm going to go back over some of those pictures again, because it's important to know that we're, there's the caveman. I put some words on it. Here's you don't need to, see Zach's comments. He was putting them out there. The dispensationalists are hung up on Zechariah 14. They don't understand Revelation 24 and 6. And anyone that believes that those saints that they're talking about lived on earth with Jesus ruling on a throne in Israel, they're not real golden age past theologians. They're newcomers who are still trying to work it out. Can't be that way. They don't understand Revelation 19. has not happened yet. Jesus come back, see, comes in full measure of God. Well, no coming. He ain't leaving. We'll keep reading Revelation 19, 11 through 25. I showed the verses that, I finished these college stuff. I made jokes about the weird world of Uranus. So I wasn't just talking about it. I had pictures. It was supposed to be funny because Uranus is the only planet that's sideways. Yeah, man, they didn't even know it was. They got this ring on it. They got 10 new moons in 1986. I wasn't just talking about Uranus. And, here is, from Nevada, the quantum physicist who is questioning gravity, saying the data leads the way. It's supposed to open up what we see. And they're no closer to understanding gravity than Isaac Newton. This is the knucklehead that got stuck trying to define the meter and explaining there's just no way that they, could define a second. We got a meter and we're stuck with it. All right. The arch, we might even look at the arches in your foot. They're saying that's 2,000 years. Goes back to Rome, of course. It's either Rome or Greece. But they weren't cavemen. This was, 1,000 years. They put it up this way because they had to, or they wanted to. Do they have it right? Göbekli Tepe, 9,000 BC. Well, we're getting in the ballpark of where these cities, which were not built by cavemen, they're bigger, they're elaborate. They weren't built by cavemen because they were never cavemen. The first canoe, they say, the oldest canoe they can find is somebody dug it out of wood. Does that mean he was a caveman? Or does it mean he wasn't allowed the tools to do it with? We'll look at Ezekiel 31, where it says, "This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, declares the Lord God." It's Ezekiel 31:18. "Who then is like you in glory and greatness among the trees of Eden?" The previous chapter talks about there are trees that grew up by the river and all the birds came to eat at them and they fell down. And then it says, this is Pharaoh, how he was built up, and so God could show his glory. This is what we're going to be looking at for Samuel after we look at, well, you'll see. There was no blacksmith to be found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make themselves swords or spears. So they didn't allow them to. The Israel didn't do good with their king and stuff like that. It didn't work out well from the beginning. But they had, every one of the Israelites had to go down to the Philistines just to sharpen their plowshare, mattock, axe, and sickle. And they charged them, as I said, probably not for the mileage. And for the Jews, the people that believe that that's really Israel today, and for the Golden Age past people who want to believe that Zechariah 14 teaches about a split in the earth that's going to be, oh my goodness. Come on, man, that's dispensationalism. And you're falling hook, line, and sink. You're getting there. But did Israel still do wickedly at the end and they were both swept away, you and your king? How was that choosing Barabbas working out for them? Full disclosure, I probably made that mistake because I'm getting the start of a toothache on my lower tooth and I haven't had any trouble with it in the past. And I'm just like thinking, oh man, I need to take some more colloidal silver. But I hope you understand, I'm a little bit distracted tonight because I had this big topic I've been planning all day, exposed to Caveman, and then all of a sudden, boom, toothache. But as when I was born, when there were 48 states, I'm pushing 66 years old. I'm 65. The grinders are going to go away and the eyes are going to fade and dim. That's just the way it's going to be. And I'm still distracted trying to read Zach here. Well, we'll see. Time will tell. So you're soy free. I appreciate you sticking around. I hope you stuck around. I caught it within a few minutes. I've gone longer, not proud of it, but I have gone longer. What's a caveman? Where did this myth start? Well, obviously it had to start in early 1900s. Probably started in 1888, RJ's favorite year. Hey, there is Zach. Zach, what's it doing, man? He thinks the little season's greetings, fellow saints. Hey, Zach, you want to know what they call a caveman?
What's that?
And where it all started? It's a stock character, representative humans in what they call the Paleolithic, popularized in the early 1900s, of course, when they first were claiming, hey, we found a Piltdown man, which was fake from a pig tooth, but put out there as fact for like 40 years. So everything's brand new, brother. And this, it all came from back in the 1758. It lasted until today that this guy, the one who was started evolution, they're hairy. They wear shaggy animal hides, like the club people. Club them. So I think that that's all a joke. There were no wild men. There were people, and I'm going to get to and I think I've got a pretty good argument that if you were conquered back in the day, and you were a known, hey, if these guys get power, when Israel got power, they ruled, man. And when they were going to get power, when the second temple was being built, there was a worldwide of people going, look, these are a rebellious people. If you let them build this, they're going to go nuts. And they did. Oh, but they, had Jesus had to come through that tribe. So at least we had that on our side. Tarzan, Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, the cliche, BC, alley-oop. Gary Larson said his big sin is, oh, Father, I portrayed primitive man and dinosaurs at the same time. That's a big joke. Everybody knows about the Flintstones. Recently, Neanderthals are getting a kind of a fair shake, and they're showing that they could do music and everything else. Recent reconstructions are going like, well, I guess they weren't hunched over like monkeys even a little bit. You can check me on that later. Caveman again? I thought I had something else going here. What? We'll just see what they're talking about.
Doing surveys, looking for sites of this culture, and in excavating them. He worked out of the R.S. Peabody Foundation in Andover, Massachusetts, on the campus of the academy. And he was a very aggressive field worker. He also had another career as an Indian agent. Here he is at Wounded Knee, where he had the misfortune of loaning his camera to a photographer to take those pictures that revealed the tragedy that occurred there. And he lost his job for that.
Wow, you got fired for documenting. I guess the free press isn't so much. This gets more interesting.
In Maine. The red paint people are known for their red paint graves. And this is a red paint grave I found down at Atkins Bay.
I got to show my disclaimer.
I was looking for the Popham colony, couldn't find that, but I walked around the corner and there was red ochre coming down the bank. So what red ochre is a powdered hematite. It's an iron oxide. And it's in its lumpy form, it looks like graphite or something. It's kind of a silvery gray, very dense, very heavy. But when you pulverize it, it turns a bright red. It's quite a remarkable transformation.
Anyway, the takeaway on all of this
people aren't
is up and down the Newfoundland, which is way north of Maine.
And so again, just an artist's conception.
They were in pointer chisels because they were probably under occupation like the people we're going to read about in the Bible. But people, humans, are not stupid. And if your government does something that gets you conquered, you could end up, there's going to be remnants and you can live in them, and This was a town I was going to talk about before I got into the caveman thing. The whole background on the whole story here is, but now your kingdom shall not continue. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 14 starts. It then continues. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people. Because you, he's talking to Saul, have not kept what the Lord commanded you. And Samuel arose and went up from Gilgal. The rest of the people went up after Saul to meet the army. Way to go. They went up from Gilgal to Gibeah, and Saul numbered the people and presented them, had about 600 men. That's not a lot. Saul and Jonathan and his son and the people who were present with him stayed in Geba of Benjamin, but the Philistines encamped about, and the raiders came out of the camp in 3 companies. One company turned to Ophrah, to the land of Shaul. Another company turned to Bethhoron. I know it. Get to the whole context here. And another 3 companies turned around. And here's some background. No, there was no blacksmith to be found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make for themselves swords or spears, but every one of the tribes went down to the Philistines to sharpen his plowshare. Going on, down to the third of the shekel, setting for the goads. So on the day of battle, there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people with Saul and Jonathan. Saul and Jonathan, they each had a sword, okay, to let them know they were in charge. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the pass of Michmash. I think that when you're subjugated by someone like the Philistines, Zach, and it was the time of year when people went out to war, I think that was just part of the economy where they went out there. Israel knew, we got 2 swords. They got Goliath. This isn't going to work. Every year before, and probably the other countries around just said, oh, yes, we will continue to pay you next year, or you won again. We don't want to kill all the people. Because a lot of the wars, it seemed to got settled that way. And a lot of the teaching does seem to be, if a king is going to go to war and he's got so many against the king that goes another war, he should count the cost and say, it's not going to be worth losing half my people. Let's just pay this guy. What does he want anyway? He's coming here because he wants something. Let's give it to him. Doesn't mean they were cavemen and stupid. If you find a troglodyte, somebody who lived underground or in a cave, and they didn't have a lot of steel around, doesn't mean they were stupid. That's my case. How do you think I'm doing?
Interesting. Yeah, no comment really. I'm all ears.
All right, well, let's keep it rolling, man, because there's some other Bible verses, I think, but we got something going on. I know. So that was, I got something pulled up here in the Hebrew. Oh, this might have just been me. Went down. Do we even, is this something from back in the north? They went down to Egypt. No, I think this just proves that south, somehow they know what down is, but would go down, and his axe and his mad. So I looked up, what is down? To come or go down, descend, come down the mountain. And that's pretty much what it looks like. Abraham went down to Egypt. He must have been at a higher elevation. They lowered people from baskets. They lowered them down in a basket. It was just not, it was fruitless, except it proved that, down is, they knew what down is, that's for sure. Foreigners, the most ruthless of the nations, cut it down and left it. Yikes. Wow. What are they talking about? Hey, you feel like reading, Zach?
Yeah, sure. Let me,
because I got a sore tooth, man.
What's that?
I got a sore tooth, and I just think it'd be better if I didn't. You know, the
Yeah,
less
I'm gonna.
talking.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna try to do it off my TV. It's a little bit laggy because I usually watch it off my TV, so it's like behind on my TV a little bit. But you want me to start there in verse 1?
Right. Have you ever heard about this big tree stuff? There's a couple of
Mhm.
chapters in here about the trees that are weird, no doubt.
Yeah. All right, I'll go ahead. In the 11th year, on the first day of the 3rd month, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his multitude, who can be compared to your greatness? Look at Assyria, a cedar in Lebanon, with beautiful branches that shaded the forest. It towered on high, its top was among the clouds. The waters made it grow, the deep springs made it tall, directing their streams all around its base, and sending their channels to all the trees of the field. Therefore, it towered higher than all the trees of the field. Its branches multiplied, and its boughs grew long as it spread them out because of the abundant waters. All the birds of the air nested in its branches, and all the beasts of the field gave birth beneath its boughs. All the great nations lived in its shade.
That's Syria. He said this is Syria. Syria is a great big tree, I guess.
Wait, is this a dream?
It's in the 11th year. The word of the Lord came to this prophet, and he's just reading, this is what he said. Believe me, man, you're gonna try to be as accurate as you can in those type of situations. I've never had this happen to me. I've just only been scared and acted like a baby, and had to be like, look, I'm not asking you if you want to do this, Paco. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's funny. Wow, yeah, that's crazy. Quite the description there. Okay, you want me to keep going at verse 7?
Yeah, man, it's just getting good.
Yeah. It was beautiful in its greatness, in the length of its limbs, for its roots extended to abundant waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not rival it. The cypresses could not compare with its branches, nor the plane trees match its boughs. No tree in the garden of God could compare with its beauty. I made it beautiful with its many branches, the envy of all the trees of Eden, which were in the garden of God.
Wow, that's crazy, right? I mean, because Cyprus is what they got when they wanted to build Solomon's temple, and
Yeah.
that was like a branch on what they're describing Syria.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Let's finish it off, man.
All right. Therefore, this is what the Lord God says: since it became great in height and set its top among the clouds, and it grew proud on account of its height, I delivered it into the hand of the ruler of the nations for him to deal with according to its wickedness. I have banished it. Foreigners, the most ruthless of the nations, cut it down and left it. Its branches have fallen on the mountains and in every valley. Its boughs lay broken in all the earth's ravines, and all the peoples of the earth left its shade and abandoned it. All the birds of the air nested on its fallen trunk, and all the beasts of the field lived among its boughs. This happened so that no other trees by the waters would become great in height and set their tops among the clouds, and no other well-watered trees would reach them in height. For they have all been consigned to death, to the depths of the earth among the mortals who descend to the pit.
Wow.
Whew.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like that, when we look back on, Syria, they have some pretty impressive structures of their own. They were no slouch compared to the Romans and the Greeks. Let's go ahead, Dan. You're almost finished, brother.
All right.
Because it's only going to get more weird.
All right, I'm on 18.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what the Lord God says. On the day it was brought down to Sheol, I caused mourning. I covered the deep because of it. I held back its rivers. Its abundant waters were restrained. I made Lebanon mourn for it, and all the trees of the field fainted because of it. I made the nations quake at the sound of its downfall when I cast it down to Sheol with those who descend to the pit. Then all the trees of Eden, the choicest and best of Lebanon, all the well-watered trees were consoled in the earth below. They too descended with it to Sheol, to those slain by the sword. As its allies, they had lived in its shade among the nations. Who then is like you in glory and greatness among the trees of Eden? You also will be brought down to the depths of the earth to be with the trees of Eden. You will lie among the uncircumcised with those slain by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, declares the Lord God.
Far too much to get into tonight. That is something that is. Have you ever read Isaiah 19?
Probably. I don't remember, but maybe I will once we go over it.
Yeah. Well, why don't you start at verse 22 and read this whole chapter, and then give me your comment on your first take, because we're going to be talking about Egypt and Syria. We've just heard about they were two great big trees that are very involved with it. I'm considering the Assyrians, the Persians. I probably should have made that more clear.
Okay.
Go ahead, brother. Have your mind blown. Read these verses.
All right. And the Lord will strike Egypt with a plague. He will strike them, but heal them. They will turn to the Lord, and he will hear their prayers and heal them. In that day, there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt, and the Egyptians to Assyria. The Egyptians and Assyrians will worship together. In that day, Israel will join a three-party alliance with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing upon the earth. The Lord of hosts will bless them, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, my handiwork, and Israel, my inheritance.
Probably the golden age.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Sounds like it. Here's that girl. I know.
There's a lot of panic, right? Kind of leads you and shows you the way. And, if you look at Newton's theory versus GR, for example, although Einstein didn't set out to solve the problem, when the orbit of Uranus could not really be explained fully with, Newtonian description, there was a lot of panic, right? And they thought, oh my God, this sacred theory, do we have to give it up already?
I wonder what God they were talking about. And those leaves on that tree, man.
It turns out that the solution was within Newtonian gravity itself, right? That there was a perturber, there was Neptune. The location of Neptune was predicted, and it was found. So similarly, and so the theory just had to be modified. You didn't have to overthrow the theory.
So it has to be modified, even overthrow the theory. So as you can tell, she is obviously much more than just a pretty face. Let's keep going. The orbit of Uranus, seventh planet turns sideways. Crazy, huh?
Bunch of nonsense.
I don't know. I'm for $12 you can buy this. Yeah, that you can scroll it. This is Uranus. It looks like this.
They're trolling. It's sad that people believe it's real.
Wow. Its retrograde rotation period is 17 hours and 14 minutes. It means that in 84 Earth years, that's how long it takes to go around the sun. Poles get around 42 years of continuous sunlight, followed by 42 years of darkness. They got it sideways. But they were just, not even classified as a planet. I wonder why they needed it. But boy, it sure has been a gold mine to the comedians. I know that. I don't got time
Oh,
to get
yeah.
into you. I mean, nobody, in reality, nobody in our world cares about Uranus. The decimal clock, though, I got time to get into that. What in the world's that? French decimal clock from the time of the French Revolution. They were into it. They made their own watches. They were serious about it. It's a nice watch. And he said for 10 hours because they wanted a meter and they wanted to do away with God in their Freemason world. That's all they cared about, is they could say, look what we did then. We can maybe do it again now. I don't know if that's what exactly they said, but they made up a clock and they took over France and they killed the king. And then, and then they gave it all back and said, we've got to think more about the laborers. But didn't we have a good idea because we loved the Greeks and the Romans? Huh, that's what decimal time was all about. Really? Sovereign immunity, also known as government immunity from lawsuits. That's actually what sovereign immunity of the United States means. Has absolute. There's absolute, qualified, and then there's sovereign, which means the United States is going to not be considered guilty for what we've let it do because we love them. They're great. They've been a light on the hill, and if people would have only listened to them, it's only a legal maxim. It's an established principle of the law by now. But, originated in the medieval. It's always going to go back to the same thing, And then we got the non-Christians.
What have we done? And do you remember all the way back in episode 16 when I promised this?
Is there a way we can take this up a notch and make it even better, even more fun, even more entertaining, even more interactive? I say yes. Let me know in the comments below if you guys would like to do an interactive challenge with me. And when we get to 100,000 subscribers, as a celebration, we will do a 1 hour long episode.
Well, it's time. And I'll have to think of a new one for when we get to 1 million subscribers. Are you ready? Here we go. We went all the way to New York City, got on a plane so that we could all investigate buildings throughout the world, underground pathways, underground buildings, rooms, hallways, all of this. We're here and predate things that we have been told, predating the horse and wagon community, exactly like we saw in episode 74, when the Germans called Stalingrad hell on earth. And the tunnels had the width of 2 horse-drawn carts. And these tunnels were found. The older the tunnels, the better they were made. So do we all understand what is still to come from this channel? Did we all see that the catacombs, a massive collection of bones in geometric patterns below massive churches all around the world in episode 72, where we know that there is an ability of certain materials, including bone, to generate an electrical charge? Do you feel something when you walk inside one of these palaces? Do you physically feel it without understanding what that feeling really is? Do you have a clearer idea that you may be feeling the electrical charge below your feet? A place that you are drawn to for reasons that you never knew before. Are we drawn to these locations for those that know that these things are still operational today? A presence that was most likely found below the floor in 1972 and excavated, exactly like we have shown in episode 68 at the Tron Kirk in Scotland. Like I've said, we are just getting started with this channel, taking our knowledge much further than before. And we all know what knowledge brings: power. We unlock our minds. We free ourselves to become stronger mentally and physically. Being able to think with an open mind is one of the greatest gifts that we can be given. Being able to question things and think logically is the only way to find the truth. Now, do we all remember when I said that I'd be waiting to talk about Flushing High School, a high school that looks like a massive castle, a high school that has a narrative. From who was the architect, where the mainstream completely ignores.
It's the same thing.
the
This is
most
going to be his
important
show for the
details
rest of his life. It's
every
how he makes
single
a good
time.
living now.
And I know we are 100% correct that these buildings were built by the previous civilization, and we have found and unlocked the keys to their narrative. We have found massive clues to the game, and I'm going to show you this yet again. Are you ready? When a fire on the top, who demolished the 7 kids attending it and has no construction story, and then holds a fire. All of this is, in my opinion, ridiculous. It's incredible. Well, I hope this episode has opened your eyes and shown how repetitive the narrative really is. Every time I see it, I still can't believe that we actually found these clues basically in real time while creating these episodes. You have seen from episode 1 until now the progression in real time. You have seen the clues unravel, and we are just getting started. This channel has so many more incredible things on the way. I have a lot of ideas that I can't wait to put into action and show you all. I think you will all enjoy it and be extremely entertained. And it will, of course, all continue to open the doors for more and more people all over the world in every single city to see this information, to see these structures that don't fit into our timeline, to see these coded messages, these keys, and these flaws in all of these narratives. Every day, more and more people are seeing it. And it's a lot of fun being a part of this community, and a lot of fun seeing more and more people finally see the truth.
I just don't think this is supposed to be about fun. That's my take on this. You know, these channels that are getting the 100,000, it doesn't matter if they know they've been lied to, but somebody's still lying to them that at some point in their life, they don't have to hit their knees. You know, it goes back to the arches in your foot tarsal. There's arches everywhere, and there's bones that are still yet to be found. And we can follow them in the rocks, and they will be crying out. That's where the Bible is going to take us. The literal arches, the Roman arches, flat feet used to be a thing that would keep you out of the military, because that's what they wanted a whole group for. If you can't march, we don't want these people to be considered normal. But now they know if you exercise your feet, go barefoot and things like that, who knows? I guess I didn't want to make sure we forgot that.
Very interesting.
But I've never
Arches.
heard the other side of it, and this was the first time for me. So after I kind of went through this maybe 2-week study, I read 1 Corinthians 11 again and again, and it was really convincing to me, especially because it went with the feeling I had always had about this passage. So when I was like a teen and I read this passage, the feeling I got was like, oh, we should do this. Wow. But when I heard the youth pastor tell me, oh, it was just a cultural thing, and I thought, oh, my feeling must be wrong. I must be reading this wrong. It must not be right. I'm just dumb. So I don't know anything. But that was the strong feeling I had at that time. So hearing these, I guess you could call them arguments in favor of head covering, showed me that, oh, I hadn't really been so off. So after that, I talked to my husband, and he's like, yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. I remember when women used to go to church at the church he used to attend when he was younger, and they would wear head coverings, and somewhere along the way they lost that. And he's like, yeah, I think it makes sense for you to cover, at least at church. So that was in 2013. And then maybe a couple years later, I found out about the head covering movement. And by the way, if you hear kids in the background, those are my many children I have here at home with me. So just kind of, ignore that.
I was about to mention that. I kind of like, that's one of the reasons we wanted to do the podcast. And if you're watching this, it's probably on YouTube. If you're listening to it, it's because we'll be uploading to Spotify. But, a lot of our stuff that we do, at least on the website, a little bit more formal, sometimes a little bit academic or theological. Everything we publish comes through a couple of rounds of editing, and here it's just kind of a little more laid back. You might hear my kids or dogs later on. So no, that's all good. I think that's part of why we're doing this.
Not log into, but look at the website and see these testimonies of all these women and their journey, their head covering journey. So I encourage you that if you have been head covering and you're inspired to do so, to go to our website and maybe try to leave your own testimony. And if you're a man watching this video, like he mentioned earlier, we would love to get more men's testimonies. The red words is only that part is God breathed. All the rest of it, the red words and the black words, all of it is inspired by God, and it's important because if God, like you said, God chose to put it in there, then he meant it to be applied somehow in our lives,
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that if we really are going to try to do what the Bible says, I mean, those are the topics that we need to talk about. Those and the Trinity, along with the flat earth, of course. These are things that everybody can think that God keeps winking at sin, but he stops after a while. And then it's based on what you know and what kind of soil you're in, your awareness of the situation of, wow, it's not if, it's when. This is going down right now. And I still live in the city protecting my 401k. Eventually, it's going to come time for a decision for people. Like, even though you can be called, chosen, elected, predestined, and adopted, you still have to make a decision on your knees one time to believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord and then confess it with your mouth. Or maybe all of that calling and everything else there's too many warnings about people who knock on the door saying, I thought I had made. Wow. Does anybody know who my lunch break is? Well, he's a guy that's making a pretty good living off of, claiming that in real time, he's making all of these discoveries and everybody should be thankful to him for man, we're just breaking it down and opening it up. So do you have anything that you'd like to add? Because I need to keep this short and it's late and I want to have something for the morning.
Well, I do have a flat earth grandfather clock here I can show you in a second if you like. Also, I just rented this book from the library called City of God, and I think it's going to be a waste of time, but it's interesting because I think it's about a cathedral supposedly built in the Middle Ages, and I'm already just my BS detector's gone off. So
yeah, the City of God by Augustine is something that a lot of Reformed people
I'm sorry,
read.
not City of God. I do have that one placed on a hold, but it's what is it? It's about a cathedral that was built in the Pillars of the Earth is the title. But I think it's going to be a waste. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, let's see that clock, man.
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
Flat Earth clock. Randy's got a couple of them.
All right.
Oh my goodness, that is a nice one.
Yeah, it's my grandpa's.
Your grandfather's.
Yeah.
Wow.
It doesn't work.
Hold that back a little bit. A little bit so I get it all in the thing. I want to do a screenshot.
Let's see, I get a little.
There you go. Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah, I need to get it ticking again. Sometimes it'll start ticking, but it's kind of like falling off of its base here.
Well, everyone, I had a little hiccup in the beginning and I didn't share the screen for the first couple of minutes, but I think overall Christians can put to bed any talk about we were cavemen. That all ties into the Arthur Conan Doyle and all of their famous people. The same guy who did the Ku Klux Klan movie, D.W. Griffith, and Charlie Chaplin, they were all in on making caveman movies in the early 1900s. So I think there's something to it. Thank everyone. Thank you for sticking around and helping out Zach. It's a flat earth nation. You know me and my friends, we're never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're trying to prove we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah.